CD4 cells and replicates itself inside the cells. It destroys these CD4 cells, weakening patients' immunity against opportunistic infections, such as tuberculosis and fungal infection. So as the virus destroys and impairs the function of immune cells, infected individuals gradually become immunodeficient. The body becomes increasingly unable to fight infections and diseases, and it becomes vulnerable to opportunistic infections and cancers. The most advanced stage of HIV infection is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which also known as AIDS, which can take from 2 to 5 to 15 years to develop depending on the individual.
I will be further discussing how HIV can be transmitted from one person to another. HIV is mainly transmitted through bodily fluids. What are bodily fluids? These are the liquids floating around inside a human body, such as blood, sweat, tears, semen, vaginal fluids, urine, and etc. Not all bodily fluids can transmit HIV. HIV can only be transmitted from one person to the next through only 3 types of bodily fluids, which are blood, breast milk, and sexual fluids such as semen, vaginal fluid, and rectal fluid. How does HIV enter the bloodstream? The virus can enter a person's bloodstream in one of 3 common ways. 1. Direct contact with the bloodstream. This happens when one handles blood of an HIV-positive person with an open wound or through the sharing of injection needles. 2. Direct contact with certain mucous membrane, such as the soft permeable tissues inside the rectum, vagina, penis, or mouth. This typically happens when people engage in unprotected or condomless vaginal, anal, and in some cases, oral sex with an HIV-infected person. Newborns can contract HIV during pregnancy, delivery, or shortly after birth through the consumption of breast milk from an HIV-positive person.
Genital inflammation is another marker of increased risk of HIV infection. Women with genital inflammation are at high risk of being sexually infected with HIV. What is this inflammation? Typically, inflammation is considered a natural immune response of the body to infection or injury. Although inflammation plays a vital role in eliminating infectious pathogens, normally, chronic inflammation can trigger significant adverse health problems, including HIV risk. Genital inflammation is caused by many factors. Sexual transmitted diseases, STIs, and bacterial vaginosis are the most common causes of inflammation. Inflammation is important in clearing STIs and BV, but typically causes epithelial barrier disruption, allowing viruses to enter the cells. Proper STI and BV treatment and management are crucial in decreasing the risk of HIV infection in African women.
Coming to inflammation associated with raised level of cytokines. What are cytokines? Cytokines are small proteins that are crucial in controlling the growth and activity of other cells and blood cells. Cytokines activate the migration and activation of various immune cells at the cervicovaginal mucosal surface, including T cells, dendritic cells, and macrophages, increasing viral access to susceptible cells. Increased inflammatory cytokines concentration may facilitate HIV infection by recruiting and activating HIV target cells and disrupting the mucosal epithelial barrier. Sexual transmitted infections are major causes of inflammatory cytokine upregulation and immune cell recruitment to the genital mucosa. Bacterial vaginosis and sexual transmitted infections, which are mostly asymptomatic in women, cause lower genital tract inflammation and increased risk of HIV acquisition.
I'm going to talk about the vaginal microbiome. As we all know, we have microorganisms, specifically bacteria, in the vaginal tract. The vaginal microbiome consists of anaerobic and aerobic microorganisms. Anaerobic means that these microorganisms thrive in the absence of oxygen, and aerobic means that these microorganisms require oxygen for survival. The most dominant microorganisms in the vaginal microbiome are lactobacilli species, which thrive in acidic conditions, and the vaginal tract provides that environment. There is a symbiotic relationship between the vaginal tract and the bacteria found in the vagina. The vagina provides the bacteria with nutrients to support bacterial growth, and the bacteria protect the virus against urogenital diseases. These diseases include bacterial vaginosis, yeast infection, STDs, urinary tract infection, and HIV. Changes in the environment in the vaginal microbiome can lead to inflammation. Some of the common changes include a change in the composition of the vaginal microbiome. So there are different species of bacteria that infect the vaginal tract, and these bacteria produce aminocompounds. An increase in the vaginal pH makes the environment not suitable for the lactobacilli that is normally found in the vagina, so there is no protection from the bacteria. These are some of the common factors that contribute to inflammation.
Based on what we have discussed, now we know what HIV is and its outcome AIDS. We also know about the biological contributors to HIV infection, such as genital inflammation, cytokines, diverse vaginal microbiome. So, in conclusion, I'll give you some set of questions to reflect on. The first question goes like, what are you going to do with this information? Do I now understand the importance of HIV risk prevention methods set in place, and what can I do for others and for me? And with the sharing of this information, we are hoping that one day we will be a generation that will be free from HIV and AIDS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that group for their presentation. It was very interesting. If anybody's got any questions, you can raise your hand and I will recognize you, and you can then unmute and ask your question. I don't see any hands raised that I can see. Nalini, if you see anybody raise a hand, please just let me know.
There is a hand, I'm not sure. It says Galaxy A12. I'm not sure who's at Galaxy A12.
Well, Galaxy A12, if you want to unmute and ask your question, we've got two of the group members, Tolinklangklach and Notukozo, who are here with us this afternoon, who will be able to answer your questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, we can hear you. Please ask your question nice and loudly.
Yes, I'm with my learners grade 6C. So I'm asking that since it was a HIV presentation, how does it help them since they are doing science?
Since they are doing science, did you say?
It's NSN Tech Science, NSN Natural Science. So how does the information going to help them?
Okay, Tolinklangklach, are you able to answer the question?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I think this presentation, since it is based on HIV is a pandemic that is affecting like most or everybody. So I think even the grade 6 learners, they are most probably familiar with HIV, even though like we covered something like the biological aspect of it that leads to women being highly infected with HIV. So I think it's relevant to the grade 6 student, because I think as from grade 4, I think I also learned about HIV when I was in grade 4. So I think it is relevant because it's something that is about HIV and almost everybody knows about HIV. Yeah, I think that is the case.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I hope that answers your question, ma'am. Okay. Anybody?
There's one more question, Chris. There's one more question in the chat.
Okay,
can you
sorry.
Please explain?
Can
you please explain much on how one can get UTI and what should be done to avoid it?
Can I just ask everyone else to keep their microphones muted, please? Getting a bit noisy. Tony Klamklak, will you be able to answer that question as well for us?
Can you please reread the question for me, because I'm joined
Okay,
with
it's in the
phone,
chat
so-
there, but it says, can you please explain much on how one can get a UTI and what should be done to avoid it?
Okay, so UTIs, they are urinary tract infections, such as STIs. So most of the people, they acquire that through sexual intercourse. So if you have unprotected sex, that is the most likely way for you to get infected with STDs. So for you to not to be infected with it, it's very wise that we practice use the condoms during the sexual intercourse.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I think that was a very clear cut. We're going to move on now to the next presentation, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. And then if we've got any time left, we will take any additional questions afterwards. Can I please ask everyone just to keep their microphones muted when you're not talking? And I would also recommend that you turn your video off, because you're going to use a lot less data then, and you'll have a better connectivity. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to share the next presentation. Just give me a second, if you don't mind. Now, I'm just struggling with something here. Just give me a second, please. For some reason, it doesn't want to play it straight away.
Good day. Our community
Hello.
engagement project is on the effect of ESR1 on HIV replication. It will be presented by Damon Naidu, Yurisa Subramani, Tasmika Durga, and Fatima Zahira Sheikh.
As high school learners, it's
Chris?
time to start thinking big.
Yeah.
You're not seeing the video? We seeing
Okay,
your...
can you hear it? Okay, I want to
Okay.
just stop share and share again.
Yes.
Okay, just hang on. I'll stop it again.
Can I ask Tato to please be muted?
I'll
God's
start it
will,
again.
Tato.
I'm struggling here because it's already shared. One.
Immunology,
Can you see it
anatomy,
now?
microbiology,
Yes.
and the list goes on.
Okay, let me
Now
just
we
start
can
it
see.
again.
Good
Thanks.
day. Our community engagement project is on the effect of ESR1 on HIV replication. It will be presented by Damon Naidu, Yurisa Subramani, Tasmika Durga, and Fatima Zahira Sheikh.
As high school learners, it's time to start thinking big and figuring out what you would like to study in university and make a career out of. Yes, it's a huge decision to make, one that holds great importance. For some people, knowing their passion and choosing a degree is easy, but others need a little inspiration. And that's why we're here to help you. If you are aspiring to follow a career in medical research or become a laboratory scientist, then the Bachelor of Medical Science degree is ideal for you. Medical science covers various subjects and fields such as physiology, immunology, anatomy, microbiology, and the list goes on. Medical science aids in the diagnosis of various diseases and ailments and provides a means for developing new and improved treatments that can be extensively used to reduce mortality and morbidity of these diseases. Medical microbiology is a field in medical science that involves diagnosing, treating, and preventing the spread of infections caused by pathogenic microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, viruses, and parasites. Today, we will be looking at how medical microbiology is applied to the field of HIV research. While there is currently no cure for HIV, scientists work towards controlling the infection and reducing its transmission. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of HIV before, but do you know and understand what it actually is? HIV, which stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, is a sexually transmitted disease belonging to the retrovirus class. HIV attacks CD4 T cells, which help fight infection, thus weakening the body's immune response.
Currently, there is no cure for HIV. However, treatment in the form of antiretroviral therapy as well as medicines are available. If left untreated, HIV can develop into AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, in which the body is in a weakened state, increasing the person's risk of falling ill with other infections and diseases, and this can be fatal.
HIV has become a global health concern with a total of 37.7 million estimated people living with HIV globally. There is two types of HIV viruses, namely HIV-2, which is less pathogenic and confined to mostly West Africa. The other is HIV-1, which is globally distributed and aggressive. That will be the focus of the study. Within the HIV-1 viruses, there are 4 different groups: M, which is major, O, outlier, N, non-M, non-O, and P, which originated from independent cross-species transmission events between non-human primates and humans. 9 genetically different HIV-1 subtypes, represented by alphabets A to D, F to H, J, and K, were formed due to the spread and diversification of Group M throughout Central Africa within the first half of the 20th century. Within the second half of the 20th century, there was a global spread as well as further diversification of HIV-1 and recombinant forms. Genetic differences between subtypes account for differences in pathogenicity, transmission rate, drug resistance, and many more aspects. HIV subtype 1 group M is responsible for the global epidemic. However, predominant subtypes differ across geographical locations. Within the geographical locations where multiple subtypes co-circulate, such as Asia and Russia, these are referred to as hotspots. Subtype C is responsible for more than 50% of all infections worldwide and is largely predominant in Ethiopia, India, and South Africa. South Africa possesses almost a 100% subtype C predominance. As you can see, the further surveillance of global molecular epidemiology of HIV is crucial as it aids in the design, testing, and development of HIV treatment, curative measures, and vaccines. These are some of the few exciting things microbiologists are involved in.
Globally, HIV-1 subtype C is dominant and is responsible for 46% of global, with South Africa, India, and Ethiopia all dominated by this subtype. According to a South Africa subtype report, an almost 100% HIV subtype C dominance was seen, with the rare exception of reports of pure HIV-1 non-subtype C and recombinant strains. South Africa experienced its first HIV case in 1982. Since then, despite the advances in the country's efforts to reduce the HIV/AIDS-related rates of infection, morbidity, and mortality, the country has still grown to become home to the largest HIV seropositive populations globally. Currently, according to Stats South Africa's recent statistical release, there are approximately 8.2 million people living with HIV in South Africa, with women being disproportionately affected. This is seen in a previous survey in 2017, where 26% of females were living with HIV in South Africa, as opposed to 15% of males. This trend continued in 2018.
Sex-based differences can be seen in viral load, which essentially refers to the amount of HIV in your blood, which is indicative of transmissibility and disease progression. Studies show females possess a lower viral load than that of males. The biological mechanism responsible for this is still not fully understood. However, many studies have shown that sex hormones, in part, may play a role in the resultant gender-based differences. A previous study reported that 17-beta-estradiol, or E2, an estrogen steroid hormone, inhibits the replication of HIV-1 subtype B by inducing a complex formation between estrogen receptor alpha, an alternate name for estrogen receptor 1, and beta-catenin, which tethers on the HIV-1 long-terminal repeat viral promoter to repress HIV-1 promoter activity, thus reducing replication. However, whether this holds true for HIV-1 subtype C, as previously mentioned the dominant subtype in South Africa, is unclear, and as such, what the study seeks to establish.
The aim of this study is to determine the association of endogenous expression profile of ESR1 in young women living with HIV-1 disease.
Medical microbiologists may investigate this relationship by first acquiring blood samples from infected individuals and isolating CD4 T cells, as CD4 T cells strongly correlate with plasma viral load. ESR1 expression can be measured using the quantitative real-time PCR and the presence of a significant relationship assessed using statistical system.
A study like this could help to establish a relationship between the expression of ESR1 and the lowering of viral loads. With this, scientists can then develop a hormone-based treatment to lower the viral load, resulting in reduced transmission and possibly a decrease in disease progression. This is just one of many studies that medical microbiologists conduct. As mentioned before, microbiologists work with all sorts of microorganisms and play a fundamental role in developing antibiotics, vaccines, and antiseptics. So as you can see, medical microbiology is a fascinating and highly skilled career, one that will always reveal something new.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Another interesting presentation on HIV. So I see there is already a question that's been posed by Dr. Mohammed. Sorry, she's actually just answering the question above that, sorry. I see Dr. Khan has posed a question, why are women more susceptible to getting HIV? Damon or Fatima, would you be able to answer that for us, please?
So the actual biological mechanism behind this at the moment is currently unknown.
Okay, short and sweet.
What do you think, though, Damon? Do you have any hypotheses that you think might render women more susceptible to the disease?
Just give me 1 second, please.
For instance, do you think that the anatomical position of the genitalia or that kind of thing might play a role?
Firstly, I'm not too sure about any possible hypotheses. Specifically, all I know is that the estrogen levels will essentially result in lower viral loads. But the reason why females have higher viral loads, not biologically, no, but I think that possibly socio and economic factors may definitely play a part, but I'm not too sure about biological.
Thank you, Damon.
And then Damon, I see Dr. Mohammad's also posed a question in the chat. What age group are you referring to when you say your study is looking at young women?
Okay, so the study cohort essentially refers to 18 to 23-year-old females, which essentially mean that they are in the premenopausal phase of life.
Okay, thanks for that. I don't see any other hands or any other questions that have been posed.
Sorry, Chris, can I do a follow-up to that question?
Please do.
Thanks. So thanks for that presentation. Do you think it would be interesting to include an arm where you're looking at older women? Because we know obviously they're hormonal, they all have a different concentrations of the hormones. And then to give you an idea of whether it actually is the hormone that's affecting the viral load? Perhaps not
personally,
within the scope of your
I do
honors
think
program.
Personally, I do think that it will be a beneficial study, considering that would E2 or 17 beta estradiol, which is the most biologically present and functioning form of estrogen, essentially we see that is higher in premenopausal women and lower in postmenopausal women. And the relationship between E2 and ESR1 is essentially one in which higher E2 levels results in lower ESR1 levels. So that basically means that premenopausal women normally have a lower level of ESR1, whereas postmenopausal women have a higher level of ESR1. So I think a comparative study will definitely be beneficial to further expand our understanding of the situation. However, I think maybe due to possibly the cohort used or availability of maybe time and resources, we have stuck to premenopausal.
Thanks for that, Damon. Are you happy, Dr. Mohammed?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I see Dr. Khan.
One more question.
The question asking that COVID-19 vaccine was made within a year, but we still don't have an HIV vaccine. What are the reasons for this?
This one is a bit out of turn there, but I think that the reason for this is there's still a lot that's unknown about HIV, especially when you explore into things like the replication cycle itself, basically like possible targets of the HIV. It basically, there's like a lot of unknown factors which still exist within HIV, which we still require a lot of exploration to basically, if I could say, tackle for vaccine development and therapeutic developments.
Happy, Dr. Khan, would you like a follow-up? Okay, now so you've got, thank you. Okay, I think, thanks again for that question. Very interesting. Has somebody got a question that they want?
No, Chris, it's just Nalini. I just wanted to say something to learners that are on the group chat, you know, from the discussion that we've just been having. So if there's anyone interested in doing a project on HIV and, you know, or based on some of the discussion that was taking place, there's two very interesting topics that actually has come out of the discussion. For example, why are women more susceptible to getting HIV, which, I mean, is something I learned today. And so it's a nice project for learners, a social science project for learners. I just wanted to throw that one in for our learners that are wanting to do a project in medical science. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for that, Nalini. Okay, we're going to carry on with the third presentation, which is also to do with HIV risk. So I'll just share again and make sure this time I get the right one. Is it sharing?
Nothing's come up yet.
Okay. Start it
University
again.
for the benefit of communities and the world at large, using the topic
Okay,
of...
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Greetings to all. Today my group and I will be doing a presentation on the importance of medical science as a course in university for the benefit of communities and the world at large, using the topic of how HPV infection potentially increases the risks of acquiring HIV in young women with the application of science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Now, studies in university do not only yield the already famous professions such as lawyers, doctors, accountants, pharmacists and etc. They also yield highly skilled and professional medical scientists. Medical science is the science behind medicine and health that deals with the maintenance of health, prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of diseases that affect the human body. It covers history, developments, and discoveries of how the human body functions based on basic biology. It is divided into different areas of specialization, including anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and microbiology. Medical microbiology studies the prevention and treatment of infections caused by microorganisms in humans. Medical research is an area of research that yields profound discoveries each year. These discoveries are highly valued in communities as they provide people with important information about the trends, risk factors, and outcomes of treatments. All this is done by the integration of 4 disciplines, namely science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is STEM for short. STEM is an interdisciplinary approach that is applied everywhere, but in this case to find out more regarding the human body. It covers the study of science, technology, and engineering in learning about the connection between the causality of different diseases and their treatments. The integration of what learners learn in theory and using real-world teaching methods allows learners to develop critical thinking skills and make interesting discoveries. In this case, the application of how HPV infection potentially increases the risk of acquiring HIV in young women.
Science is helping us break down the molecular mechanism of many diseases and contributes to the development of drugs. HPVs are double-stranded DNA viruses that infect squamous epithelia. HPV infections are sexually transmitted. In sexually active women, the lifetime risk of contracting high-risk HPV infections is approximately 70 to 75%. The vaginal microenvironment is complex and responds to changes brought about by many factors such as STIs and bacterial vaginosis. HIV is a virus that attacks the cells in the body which help to fight infections, rendering the person prone to other infections. HIV positive individuals have a greater chance of acquiring HPV infections. There is a link between HPV infection and an increased HIV risk.
A wide variety of technologies and tools have made it possible to easily detect and diagnose diseases. Various HPV test types now exist, like the Roche linear array HPV genotyping test and the HPV DNA test. The HPV DNA test has been shown to be the most effective for vaginal specimens and is conducted by medical scientists in laboratories where they collect and process cervical vaginal lavage from the female cervix. This test can recognize DNA of high-risk varieties of HPV that have been linked to genital cancers. The principle of multiplex ELISA assay can be used for testing for cytokine biomarkers and genital inflammation from the cervical vaginal lavage and are measured using the Luminex map technology. Another test, like the pap smear test, reveals any abnormalities that lead to the development of cervical cancer using the multiplex real-time polymerase chain reaction method, which can also be used to detect the type of microorganisms that dominate the vaginal environment.
Engineering applies all STEM fields to solve problems and create innovative devices, structures, and software applications. The field of engineering is applied in medicine by the integration into viral-like particles via genetic and bioengineering. This field also provides medical scientists with a better understanding in emerging diseases and solutions to clinical problems. Viral-like particles are used in the manufacturing of the human papillomavirus. They improve efficacy as vaccines, enhance stability, and allow for a more versatile display of antigens. There are clinically approved HPV vaccinations for specific genotypes of HPV, but not all. Within these HPV vaccinations, there are three that are common: the Gardasil, the Gardasil 9, and Cervarix. HPV vaccines are 100% effective and prevent genital warts and cancer as a byproduct of the infection.
Statistics is a branch of science that deals with the collection, organization, analysis of data, and drawing of inferences from the samples to the whole population. This helps in keeping the public informed about what's happening in the world and that the information provided is accurate. This requires a proper design of the study, an appropriate selection of the study sample, and the use of a suitable statistical test. An adequate knowledge of statistics is necessary for proper designing of an epidemiological study or a clinical trial. During statistical analysis in HIV and HPV studies, HIV-adjusted hazard ratios and 95% confidence intervals of HPV genotypes are estimated using the Cox survival analysis. The calculation of relative expression between HPV negative and HPV positive women is calculated using the Mann-Whitney test, and tools like the GraphPad Prism and Stata software are used to analyze and generate graphs that, if accurate, are then shared with the population via different forms of information sharing.
In conclusion, the STEM approach to education fosters creativity, critical thinking, inspires and motivates young people to generate new methods and ideas, coming up with their own solutions. Medical scientists exist as the detective of the healthcare field as they provide important information about the human body, diseases, trends, outcomes of treatment, and risk factors.
Okay, great. Thanks again for another very interesting presentation. Let's see if there's any hands or questions. I don't see anything at the moment. Anybody? Dr. Mohammed has said, how is HPV transmitted? Mpumelelo or non-Mpumelelo? Would you be able to answer first, please?
HPV is spread during vaginal or anal sex. It's also spread through close skin-to-skin touching during sexual intercourse.
Are you happy with that, Dr. Mohammed, or do you need a follow-up?
I think it's okay for now because there's other questions there, so it's
okay.
Fine. Thanks.
Alan Grootboom has asked, why does HPV only attack squamous epithelium? Nompumelelo, are you able to answer first? Or Umpumelelo?
Chris, before they answer, someone's asked what is squamous epithelium. So maybe if the group can answer that first and then.
At the same time, okay, yeah, no fine. Problem. I'm not hearing or seeing anything from either Mpumelelo or non-Mpumelelo.
The squamous epithelium refers to the outer layer of the skin, which is the epidermis, and it is made up of stratified squamous epithelial cell.
Okay, then could you do the follow-up question, which was actually posed first by Alan Grootboom, and asking why does HPV only attack squamous epithelium? Nompumelelo, can you hear me? Are you able to answer that question?
It's attached to the squamous epithelium to gain access to the stem cells in order for it to infect the cells.
Okay. Alan Grootboom, are you happy with the answer, or have you got a follow-up? Okay, then Dr. Khan has asked, why is HPV vaccine administered to children?
Okay, I will answer that. So the research has shown that young people have a better immune response to the vaccine than those who are older.
Okay, and then there's another follow-up question there. Can adults also take the HPV vaccine?
Yeah. Yes, learners can also take the vaccine.
Okay, and then Dr. Mohammed has made a note there in the chat just to say, a note for the learners, HPV can also be transmitted from mother to baby during pregnancy, labor, or breastfeeding. I think that's an important point to know as well. Thanks for that, Dr. Mohammed.
Yes, the adults can also take the HPV vaccine.
Okay, thanks for that, Nompumelelo. Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you again to that group. And then the last presentation for this afternoon is on HIV community engagement. So we'll be starting that now. if I can get it this time to work without.
Association between antibodies
Hang
and
on, I'll start it
cytokines
again.
in HIV infections. Good day. Our presentation is on the
Can
association
someone just
between
tell me?
Yes, we can
antibodies
see your
and
video.
cytokines in HIV infections. Human immunodeficiency virus, also known as HIV, is a virus that attacks the body's immune system, specifically the white blood cells called CD4 cells. This weakens a person's immunity against opportunistic infections such as fungal and severe bacterial infections, tuberculosis, and even some cancers. HIV is most commonly spread during unprotected sex. It can spread from mother to child during pregnancy, childbirth, or breastfeeding, contact with blood, semen, pre-seminal fluid, vaginal fluid, and rectal fluid. Other transmission modes are sharing injection needles or syringes and blood transfusions. HIV cannot be spread by the usage of toilets, sharing utensils, or by mosquitoes. Primary infection with HIV presents with flu-like illnesses which progresses to chronic HIV, and once the virus continues to multiply and destroys the immune cells, it is known as symptomatic HIV. When the immune system is severely damaged, it is known to have progressed to acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, also known as AIDS, the most advanced stage of HIV infections. HIV remains one of the most serious global health threats of our time.
History and discovery of HIV. HIV was discovered in 1983 by a French scientist called Luc Montagnier and his team in an institute in Paris. They used techniques whereby they cultured T cells from a lymph node biopsy from a 33-year-old French patient who had symptoms that were similar to AIDS. Results showed that they had cultured a retrovirus. The group concluded that this patient was at risk of AIDS, was infected with a T-cell trophic retrovirus, but an association with AIDS remained tentative at this point. In 2008, the French scientist and his team, they got an award, Nobel Prize Award for the isolation and characterization of HIV. Global HIV statistics. New HIV infections have been reduced by 52% since the peak in 1997. In 2020, around 1.5 million people were newly infected with HIV compared to 3.0 million people in 1997. This may be due to the COVID pandemic and that most people were indoors and not really doing anything at that time, so that's why there was such an increase in the number of people who are infected by HIV. Women and girls accounted for 50% of all new infections in 2020. New HIV infections among children have declined by 53% from 320,000 in 2010 to 150,000 in 2020.
The importance of research in HIV. So, HIV-related research among the various science disciplines has led to the developments on diagnosis, treatment, as well as preventative measures that can be taken for HIV infections. So here we see that the discovery of successful antiretroviral treatments, shortly known as ARTs, as the result of earlier research that has been done, allows for HIV-infected individuals to lead a long, normal life and have a lower chance of sexually transmitting the virus to other individuals. So as a part of research, further clinical trials have found interventions such as pre-exposure prophylaxis, which you may have commonly known or heard of as PrEP, and this is an oral pill which is taken by people who are at a high risk of acquiring HIV to prevent an HIV infection. So who are these high-risk individuals? These include those who are sexually active or those who share needles with someone who is HIV positive and has a high viral load. Besides research being for diagnosing and providing treatments for HIV, researchers also study people's behavioral patterns, such as substance abuse and sexual activity, in order to find a way to efficiently deliver oral or topical treatment strategies, as well as the required healthcare that follows. So, similar behavioral research monitors different communities and their interactions so that the HIV transmission and disease progression can be reduced through this research.
Research has looked at the characteristics of cytokines, which are signaling protein molecules in the body that can decrease HIV replication, as well as antibodies, which are produced in response to the virus entering the body and their role in killing infected cells. The benefits of HIV research go beyond HIV. Inhibitors that are present in HIV medication to slow down virus progression were also shown to treat hepatitis C virus. Researchers discovered that certain cancer cells can be killed by genetically engineered cells produced from a modified form
Shouldn't
of
you
HIV.
be in the meeting right now? Because I'm in.
Similarly,
Hello?
research on inflammation that occurs during an infection has led to the development of agents to treat heart and blood disorders. HIV research has also found that infected people can become organ donors, thus decreasing transplantation waiting lists as well as stigma attached to HIV. In summary, HIV research has value in finding treatments for other health conditions. Some studies have also shown that rare individuals have a variation in their genes that prevents them from acquiring HIV even after repeated virus exposure, and this can help researchers develop therapeutics for resistance against the virus. Currently, there is no cure or vaccine for HIV, and until this is discovered, research will continue so that a cure or successful treatments that limit side effects and future health concerns can be found.
Science has played a crucial role in HIV research. Over the past several decades, researchers have learned a lot about the human immunodeficiency virus and the disease caused by it. Researchers at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and at research centers around the world are exploring new ways to prevent and treat HIV infection, as well as to better understand the virus with the goal of finding a cure. Current research is underway to produce a vaccine to prevent HIV infection. Dr. Sanders from the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands and his team are working on engineering vaccines that are more stable and that identify the virus easily. If they are successful, the first effective vaccine for HIV will be developed. HIV research has also aided in finding cures for certain types of cancers. The safety of this gene therapy approach was determined through HIV research and was then applied to cancer research and is now being studied as an approach for other diseases. As a result of the scientific research done for HIV, research in other diseases has benefited. Technology has aided in increasing HIV testing and improving treatment adherence. Examples of these technologies are nanotechnology, microfluidics, and next-generation sequencing, which may contribute to ending the HIV epidemic by 2030. Nucleic acid tests, antigen tests, and antibody testing are the diagnostic tests that were developed to identify HIV. Statistics, HIV prevalence, and HIV incidence rates are all useful mathematical indicators that contribute to data collection and aid in planning and resource allocation for the care and treatment services for HIV infection. Data collection is extremely valuable in research and aids in tracking the disease and allows for global comparisons. These technologies and all the information that is currently available to us are a result of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which allows for further scientific research to be carried out, resulting in more knowledge on the HIV virus being gained, contributing to a vaccine being developed. Medical sciences has had a great impact on our lives by focusing on giving more life to humans, by aiding in the diagnosis and treatment of diseases, ailments, and conditions.
Right, thank you very much for that group's presentation. Again, another interesting presentation. So I see Dr. Mohammed has got a question there. What are T cells? And then the second part, you mentioned what cytokinins are, signal protein molecules. Can you explain using terminology that the learners can understand? Cassandra? Are you able to answer those questions?
Hi. So T cells form part of the immune response. When foreign substances enter our body, then T cells aid in fighting off those infections. So your cytokines are your protein molecules. So you get cytokine signaling between different cells and other molecules, and cytokines also help in inflammation. So when you get different infections in your body, cytokines are these protein molecules that increase inflammation in your body and promote different infections.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Dr. Mohammed. You said thank you already. Any other questions? Dr. Khan has said women and young girls continue to be infected at high rates. What new approaches could be used to change this trend?
So currently the approach that's being used to treat HIV or prevent HIV is PrEP. So PrEP is being available in the form of oral pills and a topical cream. And if this treatment is effective, then it can be distributed to women, especially young girls, and help prevent HIV infections.
Thank you. Dr. Khan, you happy?
Now, I'm not thinking in terms of, well, yes, the PrEP can help, but that still encourages young girls in particular to be engaged in activities that possibly they shouldn't be at the ages where they are at that particular time. So I'm thinking of the ABCs in particular. Is there a way possibly, do you think, that we could use the ABCs in a different way that would allow young girls to take better care?
So the ABCs, you're speaking about abstaining from sexual activity, but ultimately that comes down to the decision of the person involved. So as much as you could encourage people and present them with the facts that HIV infection the rates are so high, they will still continue to do that, even with presenting treatment strategies that, as you said, may promote them being sexually active.
So that's abstaining. What's the B and C?
Okay, so abstinence and being faithful. So that B is for being faithful. So that's in terms of not having too many sexual partners. And then C would be condomize. So that would be a form of a contraceptive that's used to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted infections.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. We've got a minute or two if anybody's still got a question that they'd like to ask. Possibly any of the fellow students from other groups, if you would like to ask a question from one of the other groups, even if it's from the previous presentations.
Chris?
Yeah.
There was a question, I think I'm not sure it was Dr. Khan, the first group, after the first group. I'm not sure if her question was answered.
I'm just going back in the questions.
Can the group please quickly explain in simple terms what they were doing in terms of research in this area?
Okay.
I think that was for the first group. Okay. I'm not sure if the group answered that question.
I can't remember.
Okay, I'm going to take that one. I didn't answer. Okay,
please
so basically, can you hear me?
Yes, please carry on.
Oh, okay, so basically what we are doing, we are looking at the samples that were collected in the Caprisa 004 trial. There was administering the gel as a form of the family planning method. So what it was discovered that most of the people that the gel was not effective in them, they had the high level of cytokines. So what we are doing, we just monitoring the level of cytokines that are found in the samples to see if it led as a biological contributor to inflammation, and it posed a great risk for them to acquire HIV.
Thanks very much for that, Tony Franklin. Okay, I think we reached the end of the time allowed. So thank you once again for participating. To remind everyone that there'll still be another 4 presentations tomorrow afternoon at the same time using the same login details as you used today. And they will all be presentations around human physiology. So thank you for today's presenters. I think there were some very interesting presentations done. And before we close, I'd just like to mention to any of the learners who might still want to get involved in doing an expo project, you can go onto our website, and I'm just typing it into the chat at the moment, but it's just www.exposcience.co.za. And you can either find the contact details for the people in your area, province or region, who will be able to assist, and there's a lot of information on the website as well. Dr. Mohammed or Dr. Khan, would you like to make any closing comments?
Just thank you to all the groups that presented today, and thanks to the learners for attending. I hope the session was informative and stimulated some ideas for them. Thanks.
And for you, to you for coordinating and making the presentations available. Right, thanks very much then, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Bye.